Welcome back, everybody, to another roundtable today. As always, we have Pitching Ninja, owner of Flat Ground App and Bats, Rob Friedman, Coach Robin Lund from the University of Iowa, and from James Madison University, Coach Jimmy Jackson. Coach Jackson, let's go straight to you. I know that you have watched some of the podcasts that we've been putting out through the quarantine. What's a message that we're missing, though? What's something you're watching? Because I know one day you sent me a message and you said I was missing an important state. I believe you said. But what's a message that we're missing that you think people need to hear right now?
Honestly, I don't know. You guys have hit on a lot of really good things. I mean, when I was giving you a little bit of crap, it was just about our own state here, because I think the state of Virginia is pretty good for baseball as far as the big leaguers that have come out. And you know, you got a lot of Division I schools, D2, D3, basically every single level we have in our state. But that was more so me just messing with you. But
so let me ask you this, because I'm in North Carolina, and there's so many Division I teams here that they go out of state a lot instead of just this rat race or fighting each other here. And I know one of the big places they go is Virginia, and that's also or into the Virginias. Something a lot of schools do. Like, how much are you battling recruiting wise, schools that are coming into your state trying to pick it apart?
yeah, no, that happens a lot. I mean, but I'll be honest with you, it's nothing compared to what I had to do in 7 years in the state of New York at two different schools, because everybody and their brother goes up there. And of course, we couldn't say anything about having great weather, where our weather in North Carolina, it's not really any difference. Facility-wise as well, I think we stack up with any school in North Carolina, to be honest with you. We might have a little less seating at our stadium, but that's about it. So, yeah, we deal with it a lot. I know when we got here 5 years ago, it was definitely sad to see we're playing UNCW in our own league. You know, they've dominated the league a little bit, and two of their best players, top-round draft picks, are Virginia guys. Which was confusing to me at first because I had just moved here. But, you know, I think it's something you're going to deal with no matter what state you're in. There's always going to be somebody from another state or at a Power 5 or, you know, whatever that comes into, you know, your area, I guess. But that's one thing I think we've done really well, and it helps having a head coach that spent his entire life in the state of Virginia, and he's coached at 3 schools in the state. He went to school in the state, grew up in basically the most heavily populated area of the state in Richmond, Virginia. So you're not really going to meet a person in the state of Virginia that doesn't know our head coach. And that has helped me and the other assistants tremendously, on top of the fact that he's got a great reputation, of course. So that helps us. You know, we get a lot of guys in state, maybe even over some schools at times, trying to talk them into not leaving the state, you know, pushing the fact of the competition level that we have.
What about you, Coach Lund? What is it like in Iowa recruiting? And that would be considered the breadbasket of America, right? I know Rob,
yeah, absolutely. Well,
Rob will correct me on my geography anytime it's wrong.
Yeah, Mr. Great Lakes or whatever.
Great Lakes.
Yeah.
All right. So, Coach Lund, what's it like? Is it tough to recruit from there, or do you have to stay local? Like, which direction do you go? Because you can go all sorts of directions.
We have a very similar situation. You know, I work for Rick Heller. Rick Heller has been a head baseball coach since he was 23 years old, and I believe he's coached in the state of Iowa all but maybe 5 years. He had a stint in Indiana State when Northern Iowa dropped baseball. He was the head coach at Indiana State for a few years. But and then our recruiting coordinator, Marty Sutherland. I mean, Marty's from Iowa, played here. He's coached here his whole life. So kind of like Jimmy said, our head coach and our recruiting coordinator literally know everybody in the state. I mean, and so, and not only that, they're like really good people that have been helping out high school coaches and will just basically give you literally a shirt off their back to help you. And so I think they've created a lot of goodwill amongst and a lot of trust amongst the high school coaches. And so I think most of the high school coaches, I would say, would feel proud sending their kids to Iowa. We're the only Division I program in the state now. Drake doesn't have baseball. Northern Iowa dropped it. Iowa State dropped it years ago. So we're kind of it. And then from, you know, your question about what it's like recruiting in Iowa, like I think we're also the only state in the country that plays high school baseball in the summer. And so that creates some interesting dynamics as well. And so you know, we got our, and kids like to play high school ball here. It's kind of like Legion, where like I played high school Legion ball in Idaho, where Legion is kind of king in the summer. Still in the West, like Legion's, I think, still a really big deal. So high school here is kind of like American Legion for all us guys that were in the West anyway.
So y'all are both pitching guys. How do you, what's your biggest pitch to me? That's a bad pun. If I'm looking at schools, what would you say you do better than everybody?
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Throw him first. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it's tough because I don't want to say we do it better than anybody else by any stretch. The one thing that I can tell you that I think has helped over the course of time is not just saying that we're very open-minded and that we allow a lot of freedom in our program, but actually doing it. So I think a lot of people say it, and then 2 years later, 3 years later, that mom or dad or summer coach or high school coach finds out, well, they told him he could do X, Y, and Z, and then they showed up. And all of a sudden it became, this is what you do because this is what we do. And to be honest, I've never really been that way. I've definitely changed a lot in the last 15 years of coaching, but there was definitely some things I used to push before that I've completely gone away from. But at the same time, I think it's just the fact of being more open. So, you know, we want guys in the wintertime to go back to their facilities and train. I don't want them just to stick to the JMU baseball pitchers throwing program. Like, you know, that's not a thing for us. So to be honest, I think it's just that. It's just the openness that we have with our guys and especially with our pitchers as far as freedom within their programs.
Yeah, for us, something that's probably unique to us is just all the tech that we use, and not just the tech, but you know, you hear that there's some programs have some stuff, but it's more of a recruiting tool. Just, you know, we have it, but we don't really use it. We have a team of 21 undergraduate managers that help us. 6 of them are just they only deal with data and analysis. And when I got here, the first thing I noticed with all the tech that we were using was we were using a lot of different things. Like, you name it, we use it, but those data weren't being kind of compiled and actually analyzed. Our managers were doing lots of work, but it was a lot of reporting. And I kind of told the guys, like, anybody can generate a report. That's not analysis. You guys are calling yourselves analysts. We need to actually analyze stuff. And so we spent last year essentially automating as much as we could, you know, making sure like any piece of the data, any piece of equipment that has got an API, that we can start to pull that data from the cloud and get it into R or whatever program our kids are comfortable with, and start automating those things. And so now we're at a point where, you know, our blast sensors, our Modus sleeves, our HitTrax data, our TrackMan data, our Rapsoda, everything is being pulled and is in kind of it's a unique place, and everybody can kind of play in that sandbox. And then I meet with those guys once a week, and we put projects together, and now they're doing real analysis now. So I think that's something that we do, you know, pretty well.
I kind of like this because you have 2 different ways of going about it. One is, I mean, I guess in either case, nobody knows all the answers. So part of it is being open to new ideas, I think, is important. Things are changing all the time, allowing pitchers the freedom, since nobody is alike. But also on the pure technology side, being able to have a roadmap of where you think somebody should go. And I know you have a biomechanics background, which is also useful. So I kind of like the 2 different views of both of y'all, because I think they both have a ton of merit. The worst to me is a coach that doesn't know what they're doing and insists on the program to be done, which is about the entire history of college baseball up until recently, I think. It's awesome to not know things and to say maybe this pitcher's unique. I'd be curious to hear your views on that, just on the uniqueness of pitchers and how you deal with different situations.
Go ahead, Coach. You can go first.
Yeah, you bet. Well,
Rob's not used to roundtables. He's supposed to tell you which one goes first.
and Jimmy and I are both so polite, right? I love that you said that. One of the things that's been driving me nuts. In fact, I have to put Twitter down every once in a while. Like the hitting side, obviously, I've been a hitting coach my whole life. I only just started being a pitching coach last year. Actually, this is the first year I've been a pitching coach. And so, on on the hitting side, obviously it's so obnoxious over there. And just recently it's starting to get a little bit obnoxious over here on the pitching side. And whenever I hear somebody that just like, I think it's great to have some passion, but when you fight that hard to be right, we all have a growth mindset. We're all changing, we're all evolving. And when it's time to walk that back, it's really hard when you've been pushing that hard and you've been that aggressive. So I really appreciate you saying that. But to answer your question, I want the kids to, I give them every opportunity to essentially plan their own path, their activation, you know, basically what they do from a dynamic warm-up perspective. I give them all the tools. I show them everything they've got. They've got to write it down on a piece of paper. They can tweak it. We communicate that. I send out Google surveys every week where they, I give them some constraints. You know, I want 3 high intent days this week, 3 low days and an off day, but I let them kind of build that, and then all goes in the Google sheet. The managers have it so they can plan the week going forward. But I just tell the kids, I mean, it's your ERA. Those are your runs. I mean, those are your punch outs. Those are your walks. Those are your stats. They're not mine. And so they need to have some ownership. And if it's their program, if they're writing it, they have ownership, they believe in it, and they have better intention. And I just have found that they just do much better.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I guess I would basically say exactly the same thing. I mean, we do very similar. You know, I went away maybe about 7 years ago from here's your calendar, here's what to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you know, all the way through. Now it's more so here's a 7-day week. This is what we need to do within that 7-day week. Now you figure out how to map it out. Or, oh, just don't forget, you know, don't do these heavy days back to back. Don't long toss and then pen the day after, you know, things like that. But I agree with Coach. I mean, I feel like it's almost reverting back to how it was when I was younger. And it more so because people didn't know what to tell us. So you were left alone. Now the negative was we were left alone to just figure it out and we had no idea. So any day you felt good, you're just throwing the ball as far as you possibly could. Which maybe that's not the best thing in the world either, but you had a lot more freedom because it was almost fully free. And then it became so regimented when I was in college, and there was times where we would do bullpens, and nothing against it. I mean, it worked for some people, but you know, we have X amount of minutes and you throw however many you can throw. Okay, now switch. Now go to the stretch. You have 3 minutes, throw your breaking ball. And then when I started coaching, to be honest, I really didn't know how to do any of it. So it would, you know, I think we all do it a little bit where, well, this is what I did and it worked. Well, this is what a friend of mine did and it worked. But then to be honest, I think that's what's so cool about all the social media stuff. I mean, like Coach said, there's definitely a lot of stuff you got to kind of sift through. But the positive sides of it is, you know, if it wasn't for me coaching where I coached and getting to work a camp with somebody and then putting me in touch with Kyle Bodie 8 years ago when, you know, most people didn't know who he was at the time, I certainly had no idea. Twitter was a thing, but it wasn't that big of a thing. Next thing you know, I'm starting to understand how we actually use these heavy light balls, you know, all this other stuff. And then it's kind of, I guess, kind of trickled down from there where you start meeting all these other coaches that, you know, like when you talk to Fred Corral, there's things that he'll talk about that they did 20 years ago that now everybody actually finally agrees works. And it's like, well, yeah, we've been doing that for 20 years. It was just called something different. And that's what I think is cool for all of our guys, because we try to educate them enough to where, you know, I've played them Brent Strom videos, or I try to stay away from other college coaches. But, you know, some pro coaches or guys that used to be in college, Derek Johnson speaking on something, and that'd be our pitchers meeting for the week. It's, you know, they have their books, they can take notes if they want, take something away. And for the next 7 days, they can have that in the back of their mind until we go over something else. So definitely individualizing everything as much as possible is, to me, enormous, and letting them be open. And like Coach said, they have to have say in their plan, I think.
Did you watch the Leo Mazzoni stuff at all?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Did you?
I thought it was great.
Are you along the lines of, would you lean more towards him than some of the newer age stuff out there?
I guess I would say a little bit of both. I mean, I like the fact that, I remember when I was younger, you'd always hear about the Braves guys throwing 2 bullpens in between their 5-day, 5-day stretch. And, but then again, I guarantee you, we have guys that struggle to throw 2 pens in a 7-day stretch. So I'm not going to force them to do it if they don't recover well. That's where I would say I like using it, because I like pushing them a little bit in the sense of, hey, the more we can get on the mound, the better. You see the hitters hitting all the time, right? They keep hitting a ball that's flying in the air because that's what they need to do. So we need to get on a mound and throw a ball to a catcher, even if we have to shorten the distance, so that, because you don't know how to back it down right now. Well, now you got your pitching buddy back there catching you with no mask. You better not kill him. That's how you learn how to throw 70, 80%. Or we can go a whole 60 feet as long as you can throw 80, 90%, and you can actually feel that way through. So honestly, I would say both. I mean, I love a lot of the stuff that they used to do. And I think at times, maybe that's why some guys were a little stronger, or maybe could pitch a little more because they did more pitching.
That's refreshing to hear, though. Somebody who says both is okay, right? Because now I feel like everybody we talk to the seesaw is just so extreme, there's no balance to it. I feel like, Rob, you look like you're
yeah, no, I think that's a good point, but I think it's important to balance that. I mean, old school guys didn't get it wrong just because they were old school. I mean, if you look at Leo's success, how are you going to argue with that? I mean, but to think that we can't evolve is also a problem, because you can take both. And I think a successful coach takes both. And Leo's big thing was communication, and protecting pitchers and having their back. After all, it is your ERA at the end of the day. So you need to own your career. But by the same token, I think evolving and showing pitchers different options could be really useful.
Coach Lund, when you talk about some of the technology stuff, we're always trying to gear this towards the high school guy or the JUCO guy making it to the 4-year. Obviously, when they get to you, they're a different type of player than the average high school player or the above average high school player. What technology do you think would be most useful for that age group, though? For the, again, the above average high school guy that's got a shot at playing college at some level, because at some point it's got to be too much, right? They can't do, and they don't have access to it. So if they had to find a facility that had this, what do you think is most useful and why?
Right. So, I mean, in the hands of an expert technician, just really high quality video, obviously, I think is really important. Having said that, if you don't have access to a coach who really knows that part of the process, I think just a radar gun, and some really good programming with so that the kid understands that, you can't blow it out every day. It's got to be, you got to have some, maybe like a little Charlie Francis high-low method. There's the gun, let it eat, and just, again, the human body, people throw around the term self-organization a lot. You got to be careful with that, because kids will organize themselves in some really inefficient, goofy ways. So you got to have there's got to be some balance there, but just some direct feedback. And again, for a pitcher, radar gun to me would be a must.
Coach Jackson, you had mentioned the individualized plans. Do you think, in watching the high school guys and the travel guys, sometimes they're working with these trainers or these coaches since the age of 8, 9, 10 years old, right? And they become whatever it doesn't mean that this guy's bad at what he does, but do you see that a lot? Sometimes I see the pitchers that are the best that make it out to a high level. They say, oh, I had 3 different pitching coaches when I was 13, 14, 15 years old. Do you see any of that, or a benefit to switching it up?
I think so. I mean, just like anything.
We're going to go to you.
Was that Jimmy's?
No, you're good. You go, and Coach Jackson.
I just think.
Back to you.
I thought you might have asked. I think you did ask him.
No, let's go, Coach Robin. Go ahead, you first, and Coach Jackson, we're coming back to you on it.
No, go. I just think, I think variability of experience is as important as anything. It doesn't mean that you don't have to, sever the relationship with the old coach, but I think it's really smart to get out there and get different thoughts and different opinions, for sure.
Yeah, no, I think the same thing. And at the same time, I would say probably the best freshman I've had a chance to coach thus far in my coaching career was a freshman for us this year. We committed him as a pitcher. We told him, his parents were asking about being a two-way. And we said, well, we'll just be upfront with you. We don't really like you swinging the bat right now. You got to get a lot stronger. But that's always open. Yeah, I mean, you got 2 more years till you show up. Well, next thing you know, he grows 4 or 5 inches. He gains 60 pounds, and he's the best hitter on the team. And now he's throwing the hardest as a freshman we've ever had come in, yada, yada. And the whole time we were discussing things like, well, who do you work with? Where do you train? Where do you go? How do you throw bullpens? And he's like, my high school field. Okay, well, who do you do it with? My buddy catches me. Like, so you haven't worked with anybody ever on literally anything? And he's like, no. I mean, my high school coach sometimes would tell me something, and I'm like, all right, man. Now, I'm not saying that works for everybody, because, of course, this kid is gifted. But he didn't look very gifted at 14 or 15, but it just kind of happened where almost, thank God, nobody did coach him out of some of these things he does. You hear a lot of guys talking from a hitting side about this scissor, action. Well, he does it in the box and he does it on the mound. And as soon as he did it on the mound, I'm like, yeah, man, hey, you're throwing 90 miles an hour left-handed from down here. That's not normal. So keep scissoring the hell out of the mound. You're good, man. And to be honest, I think it basically, to go back to what you're saying, it's sort of the same thing. Is sometimes the more guys you work with, the better, as long as you're picking and choosing what actually worked for you with that guy. And the same thing I tell our guys is there's going to be things I tell you to try that aren't going to work. They're just not. I'm not going to be right. But we have to both agree, or you have to speak up and say, hey, this still isn't feeling right, or I don't love this drill, or I'm not understanding that thing you said when my leg is here. What's another way to say it? So I'm like, the more communication we can have, the better. But that's why I like guys to go to somebody over the winter, maybe even somebody new every winter. And then in the summer, if most of our guys have pitched in the summer, not all, but the half that do, I'm like, listen, man, you're going to have coaches there, multiple. And sometimes it might be guys way smarter than me. I don't know. Even if they're not, even if they're brand new to coaching, they still may tell you something that works for you. Just like our own players tell each other things that work for them. That guys walk up and say, hey, man, I changed my slider because that guy does it this way. Watch it. And then you're looking at it on Rapsodo and with your eyes, and you're going, oh, my God, this is 10 times better. Why the hell didn't I do this with them? I think it goes back to the same thing. So, yeah, the more people you can work with, the better, as long as it's not clouding that player's judgment and clouding his information is the only part I would say to be careful on.
I think that can be tough for some players and good for some. So some players are naturally deferential and pleasers, and they'll listen to everything you say, and they'll think it's them if it's not working for them and won't speak up. And other players are really good, I think, about sharing that. So, I mean, I think I love the idea of listening to the player. How do you encourage a player to speak up, or do you just pay attention to them and kind of watch and see when they're struggling and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this anymore?
Who's the question for, Rob?
Coach Jackson. Let's do that.
For me, honestly, it's just constantly communicating that to them. I think the more often I can get it in their heads of, hey, give me feedback. Instead of just saying, like, how'd it feel? Tell me exactly how it felt. What are you understanding? Or repeat it back to me. And like Coach said earlier, I think we try to do as many one-on-one meetings, and they're not always designed. Sometimes they just happen organically, where a guy's in our facility, we're hanging out. Hey, can I watch some video? And next thing you know, it's like, man, we just had like the best 20 minutes that we've had this entire fall, because he just wanted to watch video. And next thing you know, it turned into, okay, so when I'm saying that, like, what do you see here? You tell me. I'm tired of telling you stuff, because like we all tell pitchers, is I'm not the one out there throwing the ball. So I can know all the adjustments in the world for you. It literally means nothing. You have to know. So before I start giving you these answers, you give me the answers and let's see what we got. And that, I think, starts to make them open up And for us, the thing we've benefited with is that, like, this year's freshmen, I think maybe it took a month for all of them to feel 100% comfortable, but that came from the older players, and that came from us pushing it in those guys when they were younger, and them now teaching the young guys, like, hey man, go over to Jimmy and ask. Like, you look like an idiot right now doing this thing. You're telling them you understand. Don't lie. Just tell them I don't get it. And that's what seems to work for us.
I think that's, so breaking down the wall between a coach and a player is kind of old school. It was, hey, the coach is always right. And I think now players are getting a little more comfortable with speaking up, but that's good. What do you do, Coach Lund, on kind of breaking down that barrier? Because I know teaching biomechanics, for one, is awesome, and there's so much you can unlock. But feel is kind of, it may look one way and feel a different way. What do you do, and how do you break that down?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you got to be really deliberate with the breaking the wall down. Like I tell them, like, it literally, if you care about this program and you think that I'm doing something that isn't great, you have to tell me. And then when they do, it takes a while to get them to do that. And when they do, boy, you got to thank them for that. Like, you've got to reciprocate and tell them how valuable that feedback is, because we're all pulling on the same rope, right? We're trying to win a championship. But with the biomechanics stuff, I wish we had a 3-dimensional motion capture lab, and even with all the data in the world, the best system in the world still can't tell us what a kid's feeling. And so that information is to me is the number one piece. And so, yeah, we don't have 3-dimensional motion capture at Iowa. I wish we did. But I've found that it's, if you've got like an outcome, you've got this thing, right? I want to throw harder. I want my arm not to hurt, and I want to throw strikes. If I can do those 3 things, and then over time, you just show them lots of video. I mean, we use your stuff. I mean, I make a lot of videos myself, teaching videos that I send out to the guys. We use just a Vimeo account. Anything that I believe about pitching mechanics, I just break them down in 20 to 30 minute videos with lots of anatomy and science and stuff, and teach them just like they're my biomechanics students. And then here's a video of yourself. Like, watch my video, like, take some notes, you make sure you understand everything. Watch yourself. What do you do well? What do you not do well? Now here's a ton of drills. Pick 5, mess around with them, get some different feels. Tell me what works for you. And it's been really interesting. I've had probably like 5 guys change the way they move over this quarantine, like literally make insane changes with the way they move. And I haven't spent 1 second with them. It's just been them, some high, really high level focus, some deep learning and deep practice. And it's crazy how much they can change.
That's awesome to hear, because I think it's really tough. I mean, changing patterns that you've been doing your whole life is tough. And maybe that's the beauty of this pandemic, where you can, unfortunately, you have time now where you can delve deeply and kind of really deeply learn your own mechanics and change things where you see a need to change them. So there may be a kind of a blessing in disguise of some of this for the hard workers.
Yeah. Coach, you got to take advantage of it for sure.
Coach Lund, with your background in the health stuff, what are you seeing the young guys do or not do that's helping, hurting the health before they get to you, the high school aged guys? Because I think it was Leo, right? I don't remember the exact statistic, but he said that like more than 50% of Tommy John surgeries are kids under the age of 18. Like, what are you seeing based on your education in that field?
Yeah, for me, I hear 2 camps. The workload management camp just will kind of complain about how when guys say it's, this guy's arm pattern is what caused the injury. And then you got the guys that are like, no, it's their mechanics, it's efficiency. Like, and it's really both, in my opinion. To me, I talk to our guys about workload management is like when you're walking on a road that's a windy road going up a mountain. When you are ramping up too quickly and we can get into the, acute chronic workload, the ratio and all that stuff. But when you start ramping up too quickly, you may or may not get hurt, but you're right on the edge. You know what I mean? Like, you could slip, you could fall off the cliff. Like, there's no need to be over there. Like, you can come over here. You don't have to ramp up that quickly. Yet And then if a guy's got a really inefficient arm path and he's doing some things that are, that are causing a lot of stress on the arm itself, obviously that kid has way less room for error. So I really see it's both. I mean, you need to be working on efficiency of movement so that, stress on the arm is as low as we can absolutely get it, while still throwing hard and having high intent, but still managing workload so that you're not. And I think it's really both. So a kid could blow out because his arm is just really goofy, or a kid could blow out because he's got a really efficient arm path, but he's just been ramped up improperly.
I think in Coach Jackson, I'll come to you on this one. I think that's one of the craziest parts about college recruiting is, at the pro levels, they do so much to look into the health of a player before they take that player on, right? Like there's all sorts of whatever. And at the college level, like, you don't get that background. So Coach Jackson, what is it that you're doing or some of the things you're looking for to identify a potential, risk of injury down the road, or some red flags maybe that stand out to you?
I think it's literally the two things that Coach just said. And the only other thing that I would add in is, and I know not everybody agrees on this as far as playing other sports when they're younger and how long do you do it and yada, yada. But I still truly believe that your body ends up learning how to move more efficiently when you do play other sports, whether it's from the jumping in basketball or the cutting left and right in basketball, football, or, golf having a stronger front side as far as, being closed off, not just thinking open, open, open. So really all of those things, I mean, I try to do my best in asking these guys, okay, well, you play any other sports in school? Sometimes it's no. Okay, well, did you ever? When did you stop playing basketball that you said? If it was when you were 8, then, I don't know if I really count that. If you just stopped when you got into high school and we're talking as a sophomore, yeah, okay, so now it makes sense why you may do some things better than the next guy. And then trying to break down video as best we can. I think trying to be honest, that's why we've, not to say for kids to come to our camps, but we have really pushed some of these kids to come to our camps because we can be this close to them and I can get our camera and go, boom. And then I can look at it right there, or I can go back that night and go, okay, he's, checking boxes that I think are efficient, or he's not. And there's a lot of times, even with our head coach, where it's like, man, he does this, this, this. And I'm like, yeah, but watch this. And these two things are freaking me out, whatever they may be.
I just want to seize on one thing that Coach Jackson said, and I think I've always understood playing multiple sports. You want to be athletic, it helps with a bunch of different things, but it may be a way to get through to coaches or players is one of the big things now are constraints, right? You want to teach using constraints to emphasize different things. Playing a different sport is almost its own constraint. You talked about golf having a strong front side. You're doing different things and having constraints by the nature of the sport. So it is helping teach while also having fun and competing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, and I think, and I'm sure coaches dealt with this in all the years of coaching, whether it's hitters or pitchers, is you get these guys in high school that are two-way guys, even within our own sport. And then they show up to us and you're a pitcher only. And I've joked about it before, and I'm like, our head coach has always had this thing. So if the pitching staff throws a shutout, you take BP as a staff and whatever. And some guys are awful. Don't get me wrong. But some guys actually look perfectly fine. And there's part of you that's like, man, maybe we should just let you hit once a week, maybe twice a week. Like the heck with the med balls and all this other rotational stuff that we're trying to get you to do. Let you just go do it. I think it's me and one of our hitting coaches and myself were talking about this the other day, because he was a lefty thrower and a righty hitter, which everybody tells you, you want to be the other way, of course. But he rotates incredibly. And he's almost 30 now, still in good shape and everything. But when you watch him swing a bat, you're like, good God. I mean, he's hitting balls like big leaguers. But every day that he throws with guys, or if he's throwing BP or something, he's moving this way. Yeah. He picks up a fungo and he's moving this way. And then he picks up a ball. And I know there's something again, I can't say it's 100% and for everybody. But, you know, coaching in the Northeast for a long time, we had a lot of hockey players. And I tell you what, those dudes 100% of the time were stronger than everybody else on the team. And they were stronger in the way they rotated, not just football stronger, rotationally stronger. And again, I never really knew hockey. I've never watched it until I started coaching up there. And I'm like, damn, they take these slap shots or they stop on a dime on the ice when they're, you know, skating however fast they skate. That has to play a part. It has to. And then we get them on a mound and we're trying to get them to do similar things. But then you take the athlete and they get on the mound, like our shortstop right now, who's a two-way guy. His dad's the national cross-checker for the Nationals as a pitching guy. His one brother played pro ball. His other brother coaches in college. And after his first couple bullpens, he's like, so what do you know, he's always looking for something. Like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to work on? I'm like, we'll just keep making sure your throwing is staying consistent with shortstop. No. I mean, like my mechanics. And I'm like, listen, there's people that pay a lot of money, a whole lot, to get that delivery that you have. And I don't really know where it all came from, you know, whoever. But if somebody tells you to change something, tell them to get the hell out of your face. Don't change anything. You literally do everything picture perfect. Now, I'm not saying it's going to work, but you ask any pitching guy, you're not going to find something to change on. And it's just, is it the athleticism from playing short? The fact that he played basketball, he grew up around pitching people, you know, it could be all of the above.
Coach Lund, you've coached the hitting and the pitching, as you've mentioned before. We're talking about two-way guys. To me, I personally don't think there's such a thing as a two-way player, because I think you're either 100%. You can't be 100% of two things. You can't be a full-time pitcher and on that pitching program, you know, 6-7 days a week and 100% hitter on the same, you know, full-time program. And I think there's a huge misconception about with recruits that say, oh, I want to go to a school and be a two-way guy. Like, okay, so was Buster Posey a two-way guy because he came in and closed games at the college level? Like, can you explain what is a two-way guy at the college level?
For us, I mean, we had two last year, and then this year we'll just have one. And then one of them ended up just giving up the hitting and sticking with the pitching. And so we're like with Jimmy, where if a kid comes in and wants to be and we're recruiting him and he wants to be a two-way guy, we let them. We won't tell them not that they can't do it. And they have to decide when and if they're going to ever stop doing that. It's hard. It's really hard. The kid that we've got in the program right now, you know, last year we might've said, boy, I really wish you would have just maybe stuck with the pitching. He's a really talented left-handed pitcher. And then this year I was just talking to Marty. We were just talking to Marty. Was like, man, I hope he sticks with it this year, actually, because we think he can really help us offensively. So it's really hard. It's really difficult to do. And so I agree with you in the sense that, especially if you're going to start, like then it gets really tough. And that's what this kid's trying to do, is manage that. And it's not easy, for sure.
But I'm going to give a shout out to the guys at Belmont Abbey, because I think they put it the best to me. Coach Nick Pop over there one time said to me, he's like, you know, we have this many roster spots, so let's go. We have 35 roster spots. We don't need 35 kids that are good at two things. You know, we need 35 kids that are great at one thing. So It's like, colleges, like, do colleges even want a two-way player? Like, do you really look at a kid as a recruit and say, oh, he could do two things for us at your level?
Well, you want the kid, right? You want the kid. And if the kid wants to do both and you really want the kid, you're going to tell the kid you can do both if you want to do both. And then you got to, but for us, like Jimmy said, you can't then pull the rug under him and go, now you're a PO, or you can't do that. In my opinion, you have to let the kid work it out for himself. And so if he's not in the weekend rotation and he's not an everyday outfielder, then he's got to make a decision at some point if what I need to do. But we let them make that decision.
I'm sorry, Jimmy. I get that a lot, and I'm conflicted on it, Coach Jackson, because every coach does exactly what Coach Lund just described. You want the kid. You almost tell the kid what he wants to hear. Where's the balance? Because I always hear coaches say, "Oh yeah, we think you could play both ways here," but to me, the reality is like, no, you can't. Like that's not going to happen when you get to a program at your guys' level. Like, where is the time where either the kid needs to decide or the coach needs to say, "Okay, this is what it's going to be."
Yeah, I think it's exactly what Coach is saying. I mean, sometimes it's, maybe me going, hey, listen, man, I'm pretty sure Coach Ike's going to start you at shortstop. Like 2 years ago when this kid showed up, that's our starting shortstop. And I said, so, we're pretty deep on the mound. It's probably the deepest pitching staff we've had. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they're good enough. Is it really important to get 10 innings this year on the mound? Or do you want to focus a little more this spring on being the guy? You're a freshman starting at shortstop at this level. And he's like, well, yeah, I mean, but, if you want me to pitch, I'll pitch. I'm like, yeah, but you really want to start at short, right? Like, if you had to pick. And he's like, well, yeah, 100%. I said, okay, because I want to know when I go in that office with our head coach that I'm not saying something that's against what you truly believe. Now, I'm not going to tell him you don't want to pitch, but I'm going to tell him, listen, in my personal opinion, I want to do everything in my power to never use this kid this spring. He can go get some innings in the summer. We can come back in the fall. We'll take our time building him up. We'll let him get 10 innings in the fall, see if he can definitely do it. But now the depth really helped us, where this year we lose some guys, draft-wise, all that other stuff. And I'm going to him going, okay, you're 15 pounds heavier. You're a year older. You understand college baseball. You understand when to get your sleep, how to do it, how to eat, etc. Do you feel like you could get a good 20, 30 innings in this year and play shortstop? And he's like, yeah, man, I fully 100% like, I get it now. I used to kind of like, I either threw hard or I didn't throw at all, instead of like listening to what you were saying with like going nice and easy and airing it out. And I can do that. Like I figured out how to throw 200 to 300 feet and still go play shortstop in the same day. Like now I know how to do those things and my arm feels better. So, hey man, you tell me when to go get loose and I'm ready to go. And I'm like, okay, great. So that was the plan this year. Now we barely had a chance to play. But then to the other side of things, and I'm not trying to like overly talk this kid up or nothing, like we did anything special. We got lucky as hell, first of all. But the freshman two-way kid that we have right now, he is, as sure as I am, he is 100% a hitter and he is 100% a pitcher. There's just things he does where, and mentally it's odd because he's backwards from what all of us baseball people would think. I truly believe hitting is a lot harder than pitching. Most people would probably tell you that. He, for some reason, thinks hitting's not that hard. He's like, well, I don't know what's coming, so I just see it and I swing. I don't really think of nothing. But when I'm on the mound, I got to think like, well, what's he looking for? Where do I, if I like, you want me to miss in the right spots? And I'm like, oh my God. Now, next thing you know, we go through quarantine. He gains another 15 pounds. And now he's up to 92, 94 in his last bullpen as a gonna-be sophomore who is still hitting every single day. And there's no way in hell he's not going to be a two-way guy for us. I mean, we literally have our best hitter and probably one of our top three pitchers in one person. So we have to try our best between me, the hitting coach, the head coach, the trainer, and the strength coach to constantly stay on top of what this kid is doing to make sure that we're progressing him, but we're not going to crush him, and somehow keep him healthy, but at the same time make him better. Because I hate that aspect too of where guys basically baby players because, well, I just don't want him to get hurt. Well, yeah, of course we don't want him to get hurt, but I also want him to be better every month or every semester. So there's a fine line with that, but I think that's when it comes down to us, because at the end of the day, he's 19 years old and he's going to keep looking at me going, no, I mean, I can do it. I can do it. I'll do whatever you want. And early this spring, he was starting to finally start to speak up like, hey, I think if I started on Sundays, like you said, that would probably be easier for me. I could throw my bullpen before the weekend. I could go play center field on Friday, Saturday. That's not really tiring to me. Sunday I should be good to go, but when I get done pitching, man, I need a break. And I said, okay, great. I mean, I'll tell Ike to DH you on a Wednesday. I don't care. You're going to be in the lineup. So that's fine. You can play center for 2 games, pitch for a game, DH for a game. And to be honest, we're kind of tailoring our lineup around this one guy. But if you're that good, you're going to have things tailored around you.
Coach Lund, are you able to recruit right now off video? Like, how far is this video stuff going to take you? And what are the discussions? From my understanding, pretty much every staff at this point is discussing, what if we have to recruit strictly off video? Like, are we willing to do it or not? Like, is it possible for you?
You have to, I mean, if that's it, then that's it. That's kind of how I look at it. If the video is high quality and then you've got some metrics to go with it, some actual quantifiable stuff to go with it, I mean, I think you can do it. Just got to get good quality video. It's got to be the right angles. With pitching, I would be comfortable. Hitting's the position players is a lot trickier. It just is. But I'd be comfortable on the pitching piece.
You mentioned, I think that's an interesting point that I'd like to delve into a little bit. Biomechanically, as somebody who looks at all this, which is easier for you to teach and easier for you to evaluate? It's clearly pitching, right?
Yeah.
Because you're in control of everything.
100%. Yeah, hitting is, I gave a talk on, I had a talk that I gave on just kind of delving into motor learning and it kind of how we can use motor learning to change movement patterns. And I talk about both hitting and pitching. I've got 2 presentations, one for hitting, one for pitching. And the thing I tell the coaches is, pitching is complex, but it's not complicated, right? Where hitting is both complex and complicated. Hitting's a mess. Hitting's hard. But pitching, definitely, I mean, you get to decide when it starts, that you're in control of everything. It's proactive, not reactive, all those things.
But you know that I'm only going to send you all the good video. So you're not seeing the full video. Like, how hard does that make it for you?
It's really hard. I mean, it's scary. I mean, especially when you're making decisions on kids that are as young as they are. Of course, you'd rather go watch this kid pitch a whole bunch of times and watch how he handles himself and how he attacks a strike. How does he handle adversity? How does he handle criticism? And is he a good team? Like, all those things are really, really important. Especially at our program where Coach Heller puts a massive premium on culture and does a really good job of developing that. And so you got to get the right kid. So 100%, my answer was based on, if this is what we have, then this is what we have. But hopefully it doesn't come to that, obviously.
So you mentioned mental game. I mean, I think that goes into a lot of it. How do either one of you bring out the best in a player mentally? What do you do? Do you take the play? Do you have one? Is it one size fits all? What do you see in a player that you try to bring out of them? Just give me some feel for kind of how you treat players from the mental game standpoint.
We start out every day. We call it, mental activation. It's part of our dynamic warm up. Is we spend 5 minutes at the start of practice, just the pitching staff coming together. Our strength coach has his master's degrees in sports psych, does a really good job. And he's actually created a bunch of modules, sports psych modules, and he delivers some of that stuff. We've created our own videos and those types of things, but we get it going as a coaching staff. We kind of model what we want to see in terms of organization, and then we turn it over, and then I make the pitchers do it themselves. So and I'll give you a couple weeks to prepare for it. And so, like, if it's Josh's turn, he can present on anything he wants, absolutely anything. And it's crazy to watch him. Sometimes some guys bring PowerPoints in, other guys are do an exercise. Some guys just want to talk the entire 5 minutes, but they get really emotional. They get really nervous. There's some public speaking in there. And I found that when they're doing it, our guys are like dialed in, like really locked in when their peers are talking, and they respect one another for it. So that's one thing that we've done that's been pretty good. Coach
Jackson, where are you at with this whole recruiting thing? Are you still holding out hope that you're going to get to see guys, or are you, because that's, I mean, isn't that the struggle right now? You see teams going out and just getting kids, and then you see the teams that are sitting back and saying, well, I think we're going to get to see them. Are you guys under any pressure, do you feel like, from other teams because they're doing it, like, we better start doing it?
No, I think there's days where one of us, between the three of us, will go, man, I was talking to this kid, and at the same time, like I didn't want to offer him. We haven't seen him. Maybe we got to start doing this. And then the other two of us are going, we're not doing that. And then 2 weeks goes by, and then a pitcher that I really like based off video does the same thing. And then it's our head coach and our hitting coach looking at me going, yeah, but there's plenty of guys. There's always more guys. And I think that's, the positive and negative, not to sound like in a mean way, but there's always going to be more players. Like I could look on, the flat ground app right now and find juniors throwing 90 miles an hour like it's nothing, like literally like it's nothing. So then it's just our job to figure out, can they actually pitch? Are they good people? Do they have a breaking ball, et cetera? So we're definitely not in a rush. We were also in a good spot going into this, I guess, recruiting wise, especially with juniors. So we were starting to focus a hair younger than maybe even what we would like. So it kind of slowed us down, maybe even in a good way with some sophomores, to where now we can just tell them, like, listen, when you send us video, we want live game stuff. I want to see the balls you're throwing in the dirt, the ones your catcher had to jump for. If you peg a guy in the back, I want to see everything. And hitters, I want to see you swing and miss, foul it off, whatever, everything, literally as if we're at the game. If you send us that, and we can see a good amount of it, maybe it'll change our minds. Maybe we'll move forward sooner than later. But that's kind of where we are.
I think it's an interesting climate where coaches are feeling what recruits have been feeling for years. Pressure to make a move. I got to commit. I got to do something before the other guys do something or lose out on an opportunity. It's such an interesting climate. I see the big name schools are saying, no, we're going to wait, which is the total opposite of what they normally do, and then you see the mid majors to the schools maybe that aren't the flashy names, saying, well, let's get out ahead of these. This is our chance to get out ahead of some of these big schools. It's just such an interesting climate to look at, and it as always is an awful climate. It's a terrible. The NCAA needs to change everything, and I won't make you say it, but I've never met one coach who said, "Oh yeah, we got it right." So, Rob, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to throw out the perennial question. I was just talking to another coach yesterday, and we're talking about velo, and everybody said, velo doesn't matter. Just want to see you get outs. But when it comes to recruiting, you're not recruiting a guy that throws 72 who gets outs. Where do you fall on the velo spectrum? How important is velocity to at least opening your eyes to a recruit? Just give some feel for the viewers out there.
Coach Lund, or you want me to go?
We'll go Coach Lund.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's important. You need it. I want to see a kid's arm work a certain way. I want to see his body move a certain way. But yeah, velo's a big part of it. You're going to show up when you hear a kid's, you got a sophomore that's throwing 88 or 90 or whatever. You're going to show up and watch that kid and at least evaluate him. You're not going to drive across the state and watch a kid that is throwing 74. So, for sure it's important. Now, we talk to our guys all the time about how the things that are going to determine whether you pitch for us are going to be whether you can't walk guys and you got to hold runners. Like those are the two main things that Coach Heller will be out there in a second, and he'll be just, if you're walking guys and guys are running all over the ballpark, like you're not going to pitch for us. So we talk about those things a lot. But then it's always it's like that other thing. But of course, we're going to work on your stuff, and we're going to have a filthy slider, and we're going to work on your changeup, and we're going to throw as hard as we can. Of course, we're going to do those things. But you better do these two things. Like those things are really important. But to answer your question, yes, very important, velocity.
Yeah, for us, I would say it's very similar. The velocity part, I think it's never going to go away. You're not going to see a bunch of 80, 84 mile an hour pitchers pitching in the big leagues, and everybody that references these pitchers that might not throw 93 and have these Hall of Fame careers forget that they once did throw harder. So because you're able to throw harder, you can now learn how to pitch throwing just a little easier, maybe an average velocity for your level, but really dominate as a pitcher. But it's really hard to do when you throw 84 and you're trying to also know if 84 is your max effort and you're trying to learn how to dominate and move it and locate it every little which way, that's really hard to do if that's your max effort. You'll probably be really good if you did the 81, 82, but now you're really below average velocity wise. So I think that's where the velocity part comes in for us more so, is just, well, how much wiggle room do we have in the sense of, well, if you can hit it, I truly believe one day you can sit at that number. So if we're recruiting a guy and we see him touch 88, and you'll hear coaches go, I did it one time, he was 84, 86. He only touched 7 once and 8 once. That's fine. We'll walk away then, because I know he's going to sit 88 at least one day. And if he's in high school now, he's at least going to do that when we're here. So, but at the same time, we still take chances on guys, if they're younger and we see something that just looks low effort, fast arm, good delivery, athleticism, with maybe a different type of slot, especially. Like me and Dustin Pease have talked about this a bunch. We have a connection because we're from the same area. He's the same age as my little brother. They actually played together in Little League, and we haven't connected ever since. But, of course, he's the big location, right? And I love him to death. I do. We're both Glen Burnie boys. But I'm like, dude, don't forget, man, you threw left-handed from, down there. That shit's different. That ain't normal, man. So yeah, and I agree. You were an All-American at the Division I level throwing this speed, and I do agree that can be done, even maybe from a normal slot. It could be done. But I know one thing, there's also that factor that we're assistant coaches, and I really want to keep my job. And if I mess up, and I truly don't believe I'm going to mess up when it comes to actually having somewhat of command. I don't know if I've ever recruited somebody that couldn't throw strikes. I don't believe I'm ever gonna. But if we get a guy and he's throwing 88 to 92 and he needs some work and he's not really commanding both sides of the plate and all the other stuff we need, I don't think Coach Ike's going to look at me and go, what the hell were you doing, man? But if we bring in a kid that's throwing 78 to 82 and I'm like, I swear he can really pitch, well, he better. You're damn right, he better. And not that that's in the back of your mind, but I think that's always something, especially for younger coaches that are just starting to recruit. They're doing the same thing scouts are doing. Major League scouts aren't turning in those guys either. I mean, one of our guys that got drafted last year wasn't being turned in by any Major League Baseball team. He had zero, the whole portal thing they have now that they got to fill out online. He had nothing until halfway through the season. And mind you, he's pitching with guys all fall that are being looked at every day. Every day they pitched, we would line them up on the same day. Nobody gave him the time of day because he was 5'10", and he threw 90-92, which whoop-de-doo. You're right-handed doing that. Pro ball is a whole nother level. Eventually, because of TrackMan numbers at Cal State Fullerton and, slow motion video capturing that these scouts get now, next thing you know, poof, he's a guy because of his breaking ball was off the charts and all this other stuff. But if he didn't have that breaking ball and the spin numbers and all this stuff didn't match the top 5% of the major leagues, he'd have been back this year. He wouldn't have got the money he got. No ifs, ands, or buts, because he's right-handed, 5'10", and he would touch 92, which nowadays is average at best at the next level. So the velocity part always is going to matter.
Coach Lund, final thoughts here. If you had a high schooler who's looking to get recruited, what would you tell your kid right now? What would be the advice during these unusual times?
Well, I mean, you have an opportunity to train. I mean, and there's resources out there. You can get into stuff that's outside of baseball from a programming perspective. I have a strength and conditioning background. I work with a lot of sprinters. I train the pitchers just like I train sprinters. I mean, it's the exact same thing. And you get an opportunity here to actually change the way you move and throw harder. That would be it. If we're talking about pitching, that would be it. I mean, you have an opportunity here to eat like a pig, put on some weight, lift some weights, get strong, talk to somebody about, again, just some real simple programming stuff. You get into a nice rhythm with your training. 6 months from now, you could see some crazy jumps. I mean, that's a fact for sure.
Same to you, Coach Jackson. Final thoughts. What would be the advice to recruits right now who are freaking out in the world we're living in right now?
Yeah, I think it's like anything else. I mean, we've all heard our whole lives as baseball players or athletes in general is if you're good enough, you're going to be found. If you're good enough, multiple people will find you. Somebody's going to know somebody that can connect you and get you in the right situation. So thinking, well, I saw that my top 5 schools are quote unquote finished recruiting. And I think any Division I program that's worth the grain of salt is going to tell you we're never finished recruiting for a recruiting class. Ever. There's still times where a month ago, we're all talking to these 5th-year transfer guys that have a year eligibility. Well, if we were finished recruiting 18 months ago, how the heck are we adding those guys now? You know, so you're never finished recruiting because if we can find somebody better, that's our job. And if you made a jump later than the next guy, well, then so be it. I mean, our hands down best pitcher right now, he was the last recruit in his class, but he made a jump and he made it late and he grew, and that happens everywhere. So what are we going to do? Not go get him when we think he's the best guy that we could get? Of course we're going to. You know, we all have had a story at some point in time of a walk-on showing up and being really good. Again, if he's better, we're going to get him. So I think for the high school guys that are kind of getting a little, I guess, freaked out, for lack of a better terms, I truly don't believe there's a reason to be. There's always going to be another school. There's always going to be a good fit somewhere. You just don't have it yet, you know?
All right. Rob, final thoughts?
I thought it was great. I really liked the velo discussion. I thought was huge, and probably the idea that no one got fired for bringing in someone throwing 98 is a big thought, I thought. But no, it's great talking with y'all.
Yeah, thank you guys. Nice to get into 2 different regions that we haven't been yet. That's an important part of what we're doing. I can't thank you enough for that, because we definitely don't want this to just be geared or coaches in the Southeast, because every part of the country is different. So thank you guys so much for hopping on here, and hopefully we'll see you on a baseball field sooner than later. Not for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.